And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson. Happy Tuesday to you. Good morning, good afternoon, whenever you find this. This is Bowl Season Daily. We are in your feed every single morning. You wake up, we've got Bowl Season Daily for you. We are setting the table with bowls. And today, the two bowls that we have for you on Tuesday, we have first the Famous Idaho Potato Bowl, which is, of course, out in Boise. It will be Tulane and Nevada. We will get to that one first. And then the Boca Raton Bowl is your nightcap. I think Danny's going to be at it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's professional or personal, but be on the lookout for Danny. I mean, it's a UCF game, I think he might be on the sideline.
He's like the Boca Raton Bowl king.
Oh, yeah.
There's a homecoming king and a homecoming queen. I think Danny's the Boca Raton Bowl king. I don't know who his queen will be yet, though.
I actually hope that he's in the Nitro costume. The UCF night, it's actually going to be Danny. UCF superfan Danny Cannell. Be on the lookout for him. It's like the Masked Singer. We're just going to get Danny out there in the Knight's costume.
That would be pretty sweet if there was just like a reveal during the fourth quarter.
Hey, I like that dude. He's Nitro. Anyway, we'll get to Nitro and UCF mascots at another time. The people here want previews. They want picks. They want to know what's going on. Let's start out in Boise, Idaho, for Tulane and Nevada. It's so funny because we've looked at Tulane and we've talked about Tulane a lot. American Athletic Conference getting started early, and we could not put our finger on this Tulane team. You are a big Willie Fritz fan. And this was not a coaching season where he was a very hot candidate because Tulane fell short of really, meeting expectations. So when we think about what the Green Wave is bringing in to this game from the Tulane side of things, what are you going to be looking for?
Well, first of all, today is one of my favorite days of the bowl season this year, just as far as the games, because I'm really interested in both of these games. And I think that although they're kind of, lower tier under the radar games, I think they have a good chance to be really fun, interesting games. But as far as Tulane is concerned, you're 100% right. It has been difficult to really kind of figure this team out because it has been inconsistent. I think the good news is that Michael Pratt at quarterback, who's taken on that job and has taken it over as the season has gone along, he's performed better and better. And I think that we're looking at a situation in the future where Tulane might, be able to challenge in the AAC. It's just in this year's conference, they kind of took a small step back while a bunch of other teams took a step forward, and they paid the price for it. Because if you go through their schedule, I mean, their wins, they're 6-5, but their wins have come against South Alabama, which nothing really special there. They beat, again, the Southern Miss team that was on its interim coach, who then quickly became its former coach because it left while on Zoom to go take another job. And then it beat a Temple team that had a horrible season. It beat my Pirates, which did not have a great season, and it beat Army, which is Army, but it was also their second game against the option because they had lost to Navy earlier in the year. So they were a little bit more prepared for that game. And then kind of out of nowhere, they finished the season with a win over a good Memphis team. But then when you look at their losses, I mentioned the Navy one. In retrospect, that's just like And if you remember that game, they had the huge lead in the first half, blew it, Navy wins. But they lost to Houston, they lost to SMU, they lost to UCF, and they lost to Tulsa. So outside of that Memphis game, when they went up against the better teams in their conference, they weren't really competitive.
Right. I mean, I was just going to say, that's how you are going to measure yourself in the American Athletic Conference. And how do you play against a UCF, an SMU, a Houston, a Memphis? There's a solid – Tulane's not part of the five families of the AAC. Mm-hmm. Tulane wants to be part of the five families of the AAC, but they've got to get more wins. And I feel like Tulsa has gotten those wins. Tulsa going into the season, projected to finish 9th in the conference, it is taking down Tulane, it's taking down UCF, it's taking down SMU. That's how you launch yourself into the American Athletic Conference championship game. Tulane has that, but they just didn't have those wins.
Yeah, I feel like I said, this was just kind of like a reset kind of season for them because they did lose a lot of experience from last year's team. So it's not that crazy to think that they were going to take a step back this year, but still, it's just like we talked about that Navy game. It's when you watch Tulane this year, there are a lot of times where you feel like you're watching a different team as the game goes on. From quarter to quarter, sometimes this team just looks completely different than at other times. So it has been an inconsistent season, and I think they're going up against a pretty good Nevada team here that I think, has been one of the better stories of the season.
Romeo Dubs, one of the best wide receivers in the country. He's been so much fun. This Nevada team's got a sick defensive unit. They are going to have their hands full with Michael Pratt and the Tulane attack, just like you mentioned. The Tulane is a short favorite in this game. The over under is at 57.5 as I'm looking at it across the board right now. I picked Nevada in our expert picks, but I will also admit that I have kind of been blindly taking Nevada on a lot of these short spreads. It's paid off sometimes, but a lot of that is just because I think that this is a game where for Nevada to be punching up a little bit, I don't know. I think the Wolfpack have been better compared to expectations than Tulane has.
Yeah. Were you not kind of surprised to see the line for this game though?
Yes, very surprised.
Because like you mentioned, there's Romeo Dubes at receiver, but you got Carson Strong at running back, and you've got Toa Tawa at running back, who has that's a good trio of players Nevada has on offense. And I honestly, I would very strongly consider Nevada on the money line if you're betting this game, or the over. I think both are good bets, but like this is a Nevada team that its only losses to the year came against Hawaii at Hawaii, so they had it. Which I don't. Where was that game played? Because I don't think that was on the islands. Was that one of those Hawaii games in Vegas?
Maybe.
I can't remember where it was, but they lost by 3 points to Hawaii, which isn't a terrible loss, but it's not a really good loss. And their only other loss was to San Jose State, the team that went undefeated and won the conference. They beat Wyoming. They killed UNLV. They killed Utah State. They beat New Mexico. They beat a good San Diego State team, and they beat Fresno. So they don't have like that resume win. So I guess maybe that's why they're not really being favored in this spot. But just from watching both of these teams this season, I've been more impressed by what the Wolfpack have showed me than what the Green Wave have showed me. Because like I said, they're way too inconsistent from moment to moment. And I think Nevada, even in their losses, they're still playing their style. They just got beat.
It was on the Big Island and in the now RIP Aloha Stadium.
Condemned.
Yeah, so many great memories in Aloha Stadium, and I guess we'll have to make some new ones with Todd Graham moving forward. But yeah, that 24-21 loss to Hawaii was that's a tough spot. I'm with you.
Is it better in 2020 to be condemned or canceled?
Condemned
debate.
Well, because condemned is structural, you can't help that. That's just what happened. Like when we're digging up old tweets, those should be condemned. We shouldn't cancel anybody for old tweets. All right. That was an old code. Like a building, it's still like, well, at the time in 1978,
it met standards then. Yeah. I can't help that the standards have changed.
Yeah. There's a lot of turn of the century hip hop that, for misogyny and homophobia doesn't really meet modern standards. So
you go back and you listen to a DMX song and you're like, I can't play this one anymore.
All right, on to the nightcap in Boca Raton, the DK special. It is UCF, but they're playing a BYU team that I was going through and breaking down this game for Pick Story on CBSSports.com, and BYU didn't do anything different. They just lost to Coastal Carolina. If you really liked BYU as one of the best teams in the country, maybe, they're number 16 in the college football playoff rankings. If you think BYU is one of the 10 best teams in the country, which I think is a decent argument, then you still think BYU is one of the 10 best teams in the country. This is probably the last time we'll get to see Zach Wilson play. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in program history, and he might be a top 10 NFL draft pick next year. The over-under here, they know what time it is. They're setting it at 75.
Yeah.
With BYU as a 6.5 point favorite. Have we checked our weather forecast? As always, check it closer to kickoff because these things can change.
Yeah, it's supposed to be windy in Boca on Tuesday. We're talking about 11 to 12 mile per hour winds, but temperatures, it's going to be warm. So there's kind of a mix, but I do think religiously, I don't know that I could take it over 75.
But
if I was going to take an over 75, I do think that this is the kind of matchup that I would want to do it with, because I really don't see either one of these defenses getting a whole heck of a lot of stops. Because like UCF is kind of flown under the radar this year because, you know, they went 6-3, which by their recent standards isn't great. But the story in the AAC all year has been Cincinnati and Tulsa, two teams that went undefeated. UCF finished behind them, but if you look at their losses were to Cincinnati, a 3-point loss. They had a chance to win that game. They had an 8-point loss to Tulsa, and they had a 1-point loss to Memphis. So it's not like UCF was badly beaten by anybody, and all three of its losses came against good teams. You look at their other wins, they crushed Georgia Tech, they crushed East Carolina, they crushed Tulane, they crushed Houston, they crushed Temple, and they had kind of a close kind of rivalry game with South Florida where they didn't crush them, but they still put up 58 points. So I look at this matchup, and then I compare it to BYU, who we did see lose to Coastal, and it has that win over Boise State earlier this year, but then you got to remember, you know, Boise State was down to its third string quarterback, and the rest of that schedule, I mean, BYU was very impressive in all their wins, but there's not really a win on there besides San Diego State where you're like, oh, wow, okay, that's a resume win. And I don't know, you know, depending on who you ask, San Diego State might not be a resume win. So when I look at this matchup and I look at these defenses, and I think it's kind of going to be a really high scoring game, more than the over, I would give strong consideration to taking UCF on the money line, because I think that there's a decent chance that they win the game for the value that's out there, just because BYU has been such a juggernaut that I think they're being kind of overvalued, because UCF, crazy it is to say about UCF, been flying under the radar a little bit.
Okay. So I've got the other side of this, because this is a little bit interesting. Well, just the other side of the UCF angle. So Josh Heupel, 28-7 as UCF's head coach. All 7 losses have been by one score. I mean, UCF is never out of a game. Their offense is so good that all of the losses, I can run through them real quick. It was an 8-point loss to LSU. It was a 3-point loss to Tulsa, a 3-point loss to Cincinnati, a 1-point loss to Pitt. It was an 8-point loss to Tulsa, a 1-point loss to Memphis, a 3-point loss to Cincinnati. 2 losses to Cincinnati by a combined 6 points, 2 losses to Tulsa by a combined 11 points. Okay, the other side, he doesn't have many one-score wins. UCF under Josh Heupel is 2-7 in one-score games. They either blow you out of the water or they lose close. Like, it is the only one. It's got a 1-point win against Memphis all the way back in 2018 and a 3-point win against Tulane. So they've got this weird trend right now where especially if they can overwhelm you with speed, talent, athleticism, they're going to win that game by double digits. It's just kind of like the way that UCF operates. You can't hang in there. And even when they build those leads, they continue to score. I think it would be great for UCF to win this by any margin, but to avoid this becoming a little bit of a trend for Josh Heupel can't win close games, especially against good teams. It might be nice to win a close one. Like UCF winning a squeaker would be something that could at least take that trend and start to move it in the opposite direction.
So I think what you're saying is to take UCF in the points, because it's 6.5 and they're either going to lose close
or win outright.
Win big.
Yes.
So Knights in the points. That's the play.
That's got to be the play.
How many touchdowns are Zach Wilson and Dylan Gabriel going to combine for here? I'm going to set the over-under at 9.5.
9.5. Oh, rushing touchdowns too. Yeah, good point. All right. Yeah, I think 9.5 probably sounds right. They both seem like they've got a 4-1 passing rushing or a 3-2 passing rushing type performance in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think this is going to be. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really fun game. I think we're going to be up pretty late on. Not too late, but kind of late on Tuesday night watching this one, because this might be a 4.5-hour banger.
Yes, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Tom's making the prediction that we'll take it right into the local 11 o'clock news with a 4-hour banger. This is BYU again, favored by 6.5, over under at 7.5. Maybe take UCF and the points. Beware of that total, because we would never tell you to take it, but we do think there will be a lot of them. Tulane and Nevada out on the Smurf turf. in the Idaho Potato Bowl. Tulane, a 2.5 point favorite. It is coming down, maybe 1.5 in some shops. If you like Nevada, maybe take it on the money line. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of Bowl Season Daily, taking a look at FAU Memphis and Georgia Southern Louisiana Tech. Make sure you subscribe so that you can get it when you wake up. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.